What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the Edison Club podcast. I'm your host, Mike, joined tonight by my co-host and team co-captain, Blake Bowman. And today we're going to be talking all about like mental health within the game, talking about growth, personal growth, and how that parallels to the game. But before we get started on that, we actually have our first listener letter, and we're going to talk about that. And we have a guy here that needs a little bit of advice, so we're going to try to help him out. You can send your listener letters to the Theedisonclubfanmail at gmail.com. I will be checking them weekly and trying to get back to everyone in the following episodes. So definitely send us some fan mail there. Look forward to getting them from you. So 5Ds writes, "Hello to the Edison Club podcast. I'm a big fan of the podcast, and I listen to it every time on Spotify. Keep up the good work. I have a question for you, and maybe also for the listeners. This is quite lengthy. All right, my story, which I think many people can relate to. I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh! As a kid, 15 years old during the Synchro era. Back then, life was easy. I was young, carefree, and had a lot of time. I was hanging out with other Yu-Gi-Oh! Players of my age, playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Poorly, but I didn't care. Sometimes running around, having fun, without a care. Left Yu-Gi-Oh! At the beginning of Zexal because Shadal and BA were a power spike. Those decks were pretty crazy. Definitely can understand that. I came back thanks to Edison about a year ago, and now everything has changed. I'm playing better, mainly improving, thanks to my experience at improving at League of Legends, but I also have less time. I also care less about playing just to play. I like playing Yu-Gi-Oh!, but I also like meeting people. By meeting people, I mean not just playing and talking about Yu-Gi-Oh!, but getting to know each other, talk about each other's stuff in life outside of Yu-Gi-Oh!. Maybe do other activities with them. And this is where I begin to struggle. There is a small Edison community in my town that I'm trying to build, but it really feels hard to connect with people. We come to a tournament, play, talk a little about the game, and each of us get back to their real lives. I've tried motivating them to go out and do other activities outside of Yu-Gi-Oh! Together, but with little to no success. Would you have any recommendation of what to do? Were you already in this situation looking to build relationships as a grown-up? P.S. Thank you in advance for your help." Okay, so once again, I want to thank you for sending us this fan mail here, and this is pretty cool. So basically, from
pretty
what
loaded,
he's
pretty loaded question.
Yeah. So basically, from what I can tell, what he's saying is he's having a hard time building a relationship with players that isn't necessarily just with Yu-Gi-Oh! So, do you have any advice for this guy off the top of your head?
You know, I always do.
Yeah, you definitely would be a little bit better in this scenario than me, for sure.
So to the listener who wrote in the fan mail, thank you. I think that even by the nature of your question, that exhibits a level of maturity that is healthy and demonstrated of adulthood, right? Just this is the transition between being younger and thinking about life in a very simple way, and then as you get older, you find more meaning and value in relationships. And I just appreciate your question. I'll also say that I'm the grandpa in our group. I'm 36. I actually have spent the last 10 years on and off overseas. And so I just came back and started playing cards again with my friends um, just this past year. So we're right at my 1 year Edison anniversary. As I understood it, the question really boiled into two categories. One was, how do you improve at Edison on uh, basically when you have limited time and maybe even less desire to be good at the game? You're not as driven as you once were. And then two, how do you build a community? How do you build friendships around this hobby that you have a passion and interest in? As far as the improving at the game, I think that basically the prince he alluded to having some experience in another game, League of Legends, and just perhaps mindset approaches to improvement, etc., that I'm sure would be helpful here in Edison as well. But the great thing about Edison is that the changes that the game experiences are minor compared to a lot of games, right? They're more meta shifts. And so as long as he isn't taking long breaks between times in which he plays, and by long breaks I mean years at a time, he should retain all the knowledge that he's gleaning day after day. And eventually he'll have enough grains to he'll look over and he'll have a sandcastle and he'll actually be decent at the game. He'll have learned enough rulings, learned enough interactions, had enough reps that he's pretty solid, especially if he's approaching the game with intentionality. So Edison, unlike Advanced, is a game that you can accrue skill and capacity in over time just by constantly chipping away at it. The harder nut to crack, I think, is the question about friendships. And this might be an interesting question and certainly segues and ties in well with our topic this evening as we're going to discuss personal growth. Um, but this is a question I think a lot of people in the US are asking now, in the West in general. We're more individualistic and isolated uh, as a culture than we ever have been before. We're far less communal. People relate to one another online. Many of our relationships are superficial and fleeting. And so, how do we create meaningful, lasting, dependable relationships with people that we can be vulnerable and honest and really glean something from and provide something for in a way that a relationship should be? My first thing that I would say is if you want to make a friend, strive to be a friend. And if you treat others with honor, dignity, and respect, you care for them, you meet them in their needs, I think that goes a long way towards gaining someone's friendship. Maybe other people, especially the people that you're trying to develop this friend group with, maybe they're not naturally as vulnerable as you are and as open or maybe not even as charismatic or comfortable in having conversations as you are, listener. Um, and so we can help people in that um, by sort of carrying them by being just an exceptional friend, really going out of our way to spend time with people, to show an interest in the things that they're interested in. And just a bit about me, I'm kind of unique in our group. I will say that I'm a Christian, and the reason I was overseas is I was a missionary. I lived as a missionary overseas for on and off about 10 years. And so I spent a lot of time considering culture, thinking about how and why people tick and their interests. And I just tried to meet people where they were at. And I try to do the same thing here in the United States. I'm a pastor here now in the US. And I try to meet people where they're at and try to show interest in the things that they are interested in. And frankly, that almost universally works. uh, doesn't always mean that we're going to become absolute best friends, but I think it helps to develop a relationship of some sort. And if you do that often enough and with enough consistency, I think you'll find yourself with a community sooner than you might would guess. So that's pretty long winded. I could have just said, if you want to make a friend, be a friend, but that's not in my nature to be concise. Anyways, Mike, what do you got to say, man?
Honestly, I don't even think I could top what you just said because that was, I mean, that was great. Anything that I add on to that is basically just going to be like rephrasing what you just said. So I really think that we can just put a period at the end of that. I think that was an excellent piece of advice.
Appreciate that, man. And Mike's an example of that. We've been friends for a long time. We were related as well through my wife, but we've had to work at our relationship as well. It's not like we just naturally agree on everything. We've had a few bumps in the road, have we not? A few
Yeah,
tussles.
we've had a bump or two here or there. We've had to kind of swerve and pull over a few times, but well, I
Yeah,
would say that after every time we've actually come out like better than we were before.
yeah, yeah. I think that's important too. Just and maybe something that people are craving, just the capacity to have an honest, open conversation where we voice our frustrations, our concerns, our fears, But trust at the end of the day, like, hey, man, we still love each other. We're still going to be friends after this, and we're going to work through it. And if you have that sort of commitment to someone, it fosters honesty and vulnerability and trust. So
Yeah.
appreciate you, man.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely important, I think, in life, um, also in Yu-Gi-Oh, to have a friend that's honest with you about things. So, for example, before the BBG 5K back in December last year, I had this really crazy build of Christia Sworn I was going to play with Ultimate Offering, all these really weird texts in it. And in the past, with people that I would like deck build in theory with, they probably just would have been like, oh yeah, man, that looks good. That looks good, you know. But with Blake, he actually was kind of like, you know, if you're expecting to go and do well, you probably shouldn't play this. You know, like very upfront, very honest. And it's really nice to have a friend that's just upfront, honest with you, because I really think had your response been different and you just said something along the lines of, oh yeah, that looks good, you should roll with it, that I may not have done that well. So it's very important, I think, just to be able to be honest and upfront with each other, especially in a close friendship.
Yeah, and that might be an interesting talking point by which we can segue personal growth to growth in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh. I think for you, Michael, one thing that I've noticed over this past year is a direct correlation between your improvement as a player and your capacity to receive and to self give or adjudicate criticism. As you've been able to receive criticism better and better, and as you've been able to criticize yourself better and better, I think you've become better at the game. You want to speak to that?
Yeah. So the biggest thing for me was learning to take accountability for things. That was something I always struggled with. I'd walk away from the table. Oh, I got sacked. Oh, the guy God handed me. There was nothing I could do. You know, it goes on and on and on. I could sit here with examples for hours, but when you start to like take accountability and accept criticism and, you know, even learn to criticize yourself, it really puts you in a headspace to where I think everything just becomes much clearer, because the truth was that, you know, maybe sometimes I did brick or maybe sometimes I got God handed. It can happen in Yu-Gi-Oh! But most of the time I was just really bad. I was making bad plays. I was making bad reads. I was missing lethal. I was I was just not good at the game, like whatsoever. And I thought that I was the best. You know, I think that there is some degree to that where you kind of have to believe in yourself, but I didn't have anything to back that up. I was just like, baby, I'm Patrick Hoban. You know, I can't beat anyone, but I'm still Patrick Hoban. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that like once I learned to be like, no, you're not Patrick Hoban. You know, you're not even like a quarter of Patrick Hoban. You're not even an eighth of Patrick Hoban. You're terrible at the game. And my mentality and my foundation for the game was completely wrong. How I looked at the game, how I deck built, how I played, everything, how I reviewed wins and losses. Foundation was completely wrong. So everything that I built on top of that, it was like the leaning tower of Pisa. It just kept leaning over a little bit until one day it just crumbled and fell to the ground. And that was when I broke.
Mm. Yeah, this might be. Um, you don't have to get into the heavy weeds of it, as you know. I know some of the finer details, but maybe you could share a little bit, if you're comfortable, about when all of this came to a head and how you felt. I don't know, your sort of self worth and personal happiness kind of went part and parcel with your self worth and self evaluation as a player in Yu Gi Oh! As strange as that may sound to sort of say out loud, do you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah,
There was
yeah,
when
I
that
believe so.
yeah.
Yeah,
What would you say about that?
I think that so when I was when I was really really bad at Edison format, which was not that long ago, I had a lot of things in my life that were really bothering me. I won't go into like a lot of detail, but basically I just felt like a failure in all aspects of my life. And I felt like Yu-Gi-Oh was like the one thing that I was kind of like good at. So I kept playing and I kept playing, I kept losing, kept doing bad every single time. And I developed a mentality of basically just not taking accountability, just throwing the blame on everything else,
Hmm.
and never could improve on it. I couldn't, what am I trying to say here? I couldn't get to where I wanted to be. I was kind of like just stuck in a mental block. And then when everything finally just came to a head, and I decided basically like either I have to quit Yu-Gi-Oh or I have to do something to get better at this game because this is driving me crazy. It's really bothering me. For me in
Hmm.
my life, I don't like to be like bad or just like okay at anything. Like I kind of feel like I always set really high goals for myself, even sometimes if they're unachievable. But I think from that was when I was just like, how can I approach not only Yu-Gi-Oh but life with a better outlook to where I can actually get to where I want to be. So I think that's where I really started taking accountability and listening to people when they would tell me like, your idea to play Ojama Lightsworn, it sounds cool, but it's bad. And in the past I'd be like, it's not bad. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to play Noble Knights for 10 years. So
And he did.
and I did. And once I started, I guess, really hearing what people were saying, like they weren't really criticizing me. They weren't being like, "Oh, you're terrible for playing this." It was just having like the voice of reason, whispering in my ear that had actually always been there. I just chose to ignore it for a long time. I had friends that were trying to encourage me to play better decks and get better at the game and all this, that, and the other. I just always thought that, I didn't need to hear any of that. I was just having bad tournament runs, bad days, whatever. And then when I look back on, I'm just like, man, did I ever have a good day playing Yu-Gi-Oh? I was just very, very belligerent, very stubborn, and once I just let all of that go, that was when I really started to see some big changes,
Hmm.
both in Yu-Gi-Oh and in my personal life as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I can affirm that for sure. I don't know. Maybe I consider myself a bit of a budding amateur anthropologist. As I mentioned, I've lived overseas, but not just overseas. I've lived in some unique places like villages in the middle of nowhere, with some weird languages that no one would recognize if I said them right now. That sort of thing. And so, I've thought a lot about people, and it seems to me that people, pretty much everywhere you go, it transcends culture, it transcends language. People are these weird combinations of insecurities and pride. On the one hand, like it's hard for us to receive negative feedback because we're very insecure and we already think so little of ourselves, and we're very self-critical, and we're prone to despairing and depressing and isolating and all those sort of things. And on the other hand, somehow, paradoxically, at the exact same moment, we are so stinking proud. You know,
Yeah,
like, I'm just as good as anyone. I'm just as capable as anyone. Who is he or she to tell me this? I know better. And we just get in our own way. We just get in our own way. And it's so hard to see any sort of improvement in Yu Gi Oh! Or otherwise when you have that mindset. It's like just a stopper in the drain, and there is no water that's going to go forth through that pipe. It's just
yeah,
clogged with that sort of mentality. And it can be a very freeing thing when you recognize, like, hey, you know what? I actually I got a lot to learn in this arena, and even things that we know a lot about. That doesn't mean that there isn't grounds for improvement. Um, and sometimes improvement looks different than we might would anticipate too. I'll talk about just really briefly my personal improvement. I feel like in the way that I approach Edison versus the way that I approached Yu-Gi-Oh when I played back in 2014 or so, which was really the only other time that I played. Back then, for me, I feel like Yu-Gi-Oh more than anything else was something that I enjoyed doing because it showcased something I was good at. Like I was good at thinking analytically. I was good at playing cards. I jumped in the game and became pretty good pretty quickly. And I think I was pretty arrogant, um, pretty arrogant in the way that I thought of myself as a player. I still try to be kind to people, but I was a kind, arrogant turd, if that makes sense. You know, some
You were
combination.
like a turd with a smiley face on it
Yeah,
and like googly eyes.
yeah, the emoji.
Yeah.
He's like, it is a pile of crap and it smells really bad, but doesn't he look happy? It's so cute. That's why they
That's
make
true.
squish-ups of him. And I came to Edison, and Edison's kind of unique. We've discussed this ad nauseum on the podcast, but Edison's kind of hard because it's kind of like any other game that's been around for a long time. People have just gotten so stinking good at it that you jump into it, and even if you do have a knack for those sort of things, you kind of just get crushed for a while
You really
because
do. You really
yeah,
do.
the floor in a static game is usually very high. So I lost. I just kept getting like going 500 at most tournaments that I went to for several months before I started winning some, and even still, I actually haven't traveled to any events in 2024. But that stretch of just losing, I don't know, kind of helped me. I think I'm glad that I lost, um, because now I value just playing cards with my friends and playing well and thinking well about the game, and because those are things that I just enjoy. Deck building I really enjoy. Like I just enjoy the game more than I enjoy winning, and that was a healthy switch to be flipped in my heart. And I don't know. I enjoy Edison again now after taking a pretty extensive break for about 5 months or so. So yeah, just a personal growth point for me.
Yeah. When I started to improve and, topped a couple tournaments here and there and started to actually see the growth, in some ways I feel like for a little while, and I've had to work on this, I started to kind of develop like how I guess I'll just say like an attitude about the game in some ways, where it was like I felt like I just never deserved to lose. So even in testing or after like local tournaments or whatever, I'd find myself actually getting really irritated. Like, oh, there's no way I could lose to this guy. I put in so much more time than this guy. And it is infuriating, at times when you're putting a lot of time and a lot of effort into the game. But really, how I had to kind of like sit back and look at it was I would have given anything. I would have given anything a year ago to be, just at the point of being on the bubble, right? Like being X1.
Yeah.
And I would have given anything to be X1. Oh, I lost, didn't top, versus I lost the first 4 rounds of a tournament. So that's kind of how I've had to like take a step back and start to view the game again as like where I am right now is because I'm here because of hard work and dedication, accountability. So I've tried to, get back into like a good headspace at the game because like I can definitely lose to literally anyone that there is, but I also feel like I can beat anyone that there is. So I guess there's two sides to that.
Yeah. And too, I I think it's maybe even going back to the fan mail that was written in. Um, Most friendships I think that we have are friendships that were developed through school, just growing up in an area. Um, that's how most of the world develops friends, and especially non-transient areas like one that we're in, the southeast, um, tends to develop relationships that way.
Hmm.
And so, because of that, you guys, our friend group, I would say you're naturally more inclined to be closer than I am with you guys because I'm a little bit older. Well, I'm older than all of you, but a little bit older than a few, and a lot of bit older than some others. And but you guys went to school together. You all grew up playing cards together, and you have this natural relationship that was just forged over time. Because of that, I think that your personal growth uh, has been contagious for others, and it's kind of even emboldened you to have some harder conversations with some guys on our team where you've kind of been like, hey, man, nah, it's not the deck, it's you.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
I've kind of always struggled with confrontation in some ways, but
Yeah.
as I've gotten older now, I've realized like it's not always like got to be a bad thing. It's not like I've got to message you at 3 a.m. and be like, "You suck. You'll wake up tomorrow and you'll still be a failure." Like
Yeah.
when I see someone like struggle, and I look at them and they're grinding Morphtronics every single day, and they're like, "Man, I can't get better." That's when I'm just like, "You got to stop." Like
Yeah.
you are literally being the definition of insane right now. You're trying to do the
Yeah.
same thing over and over again and expect a different outcome. I'm just like, Morphtronics ain't it. Put them down, play them at locals, maybe a small locals when there's 2 people there, and play a good deck. Like I have a very close friend. I won't say his name, but he struggled, with the game probably in all formats that he's played, and he wanted to play decks like Macro Stun and Gravekeepers and stuff like that. That I mean, they're definitely playable in Edison, but they're definitely not like the best deck, and not a deck that you're going to like perform well with any sort of consistency. So I talked him into playing Blackwings, and obviously there's still a learning curve there. There are things that you don't know, there are rulings you don't know. But I've been so proud of that guy just for like taking the accountability, playing a deck that's good, and I really look forward to seeing what he does this year. So it's nice to kind of be influential with people and see their growth as well.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And we have some really healthy minded people on our team. I'm going to shout out one of the newer members on our team, Nick. Man, that guy has a really healthy mindset towards improvement. I really appreciate that guy. He takes feedback really well, and is just always asking questions in our group chat, trying to learn, trying to group think, stirs up a lot of healthy conversation. And I know the friend you're talking about too. He walks with a lot of humility, and I'm glad that you persuaded him to play Black Wings, even though I would argue it's not nearly as easy as people say it is. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on like Nick, I didn't really know Nick that well. Nick was primarily a goat player, and we kind of have some small interactions here and there. And I would kind of like listen to him talk to like the other goat players at locals, and I'm just like, man, that guy, he's really out here to get better. Like he doesn't have the mentality of, oh, I'm already the best. How much better can I be? He's like, oh, I'm not good. How can I be good? And then when he started playing Edison, it was the same thing. He was sending me replays. He was sending me deck lists, cards every single day, to the point where sometimes I couldn't even respond fast enough. I mean, I'd like respond, and then it would be like, ding, you have a message. I'm like, okay, give me a minute.
Yeah.
So it was like really nice seeing somebody that was like that interested, that driven, which is why I added him to the team. And I think that, kind of the same thing goes with him. Like, obviously he has a lot going on in his life. He just had a child. Congratulations to him. So life will be a little bit harder for him for a little bit, but I think that he seems to have pretty good time management and stuff like that. So I think that he'll go a long way. And on the Blackwing topic there, yeah, I meme Blackwings a lot, saying like, oh, we just activate Whirlwind and summon Shura. And I think that will, that can take you to a tournament. But I guess in the same way, like, if you play Lightsworn and you mill enough wolves, you can just get there if you don't really know what you're doing. But when you like really learn how to play Blackwing on like a technical level, and you like learn how to use Icarus attack, was something that I actually didn't learn for quite some time. Like, there was a scenario, we were just talking about this the other day. You sent me a screenshot from a Discord probably about a year ago, and the hand was like specifically Icarus attack and Shura, and like a few other random cards. I don't know.
Icarus attack, Sirocco, Shura, and it might even have been like Whirlwind or something.
Yeah.
But you were going second.
Yeah. That was the main point, was like going second. And I remember then I was literally like, what's the question? I was like, you go Whirlwind, Sirocco, as long as they have a monster. If they don't, you summon Whirlwind, Shura. Like, what's the question?
It was like 2 set and a set monster.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember that was my response. I was like, why wouldn't you just do this? But now I'm just like, man, like, if you go Whirlwind, summon Shura, and they bottomless and follow up by Raikou Flip Whirlwind, the game is over. You lost. Everything is done. But like, there's the thought of like, you could just set Icarus attack and set nothing else, or you could set Icarus and set like Sirocco, and then
I'm going to see if I can find it, because set Icarus sounds really bad right now. So it must not have been thinking that it was Raikou.
Yeah.
That would be terrible. But
yeah,
but set
it was
Icarus
something like that. Maybe it was just 2 back row. I don't remember what it was, but it was like, now I look and I'm just like, oh, you can like trade favorably with Icarus here, you know? So like attack directly with Shura, and then they depress, and you can chain Icarus and hit 2 other cards. So it's like your Icarus hit 3 cards, which a year and a half ago, I wouldn't have even thought about doing that.
Yeah. Also remember that in the Discord, it was the Black Wings Discord, I posted, I was like, your options are to set Icarus and pass, or to set Icarus. And actually, I would have set Sirocco, not Shura.
Yeah.
I can't remember why at the time. It was something to do with the suspected cards your opponent has.
Yeah.
And those were your 2 real plays. And everyone flamed me until James Hart posted like 3 days later an answer to the question, and it was the exact same thing. And everyone was like,
I remember that. Yeah. I remember you sending me a screenshot, and I was like, wow. You know, like at that time, I was probably like, oh, well, he's an idiot too. I'll just be honest. Like, I was more like, oh, he's an idiot too. But now I acknowledge that I had my clown shoes on, you know, when I was replying to that. Like, I had my clown shoes and my clown nose, beep, beep, on. And it goes back to accountability, you know, like, I can't play anything wrong. I'm 1/8 Patrick Hoban. You know, I know what I'm doing. Blake, you're new. You have no idea what you're doing. So,
but dude, but it goes both ways, because even though I think I had good instincts for the game, right? Like, I had made good reads in those scenarios.
Right.
I lost. I would constantly get to the bubble, or I would get in some sort of top cut, and I would lose on some lack of game knowledge. Like, I lost to you once when you you flipped oppression, and what was the scenario? I tried to chain. I tried to chain my oppression. That's what it was. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's like a total BS ruling, honestly, and there was definitely frustration. It was something along it was something along the lines of, you had, I'll just make it really simple. I know you had a hero, so we'll just say you had Neos Alias and a back row, and I went special JD or something, Christia, whatever. You flipped over oppression, initially activating to pay 8, and I chain return, which now, you know, we know that you can't pay for oppression, you know, again, until it's fully resolved. Mm-hmm. But at that time, you didn't know that, and I knew you didn't know that, and that was the ruling of all time.
Well, the worst part, it's coming back to me now. You like MST'd or something. I had 2 oppressions, so I had a face up one, and you MST'd it during standby.
That's right.
All I had to do was flip up my other oppression, because I knew your entire hand. Somehow I knew it. Maybe it was off of beckoning, or I don't know.
It was either beckoning or dush. It was probably beckoning. It would be like because I wouldn't make a push if you had dush. You would put my JD back.
Yeah, I think you had beckoning, and then you had stacked with plague before, so I even knew the card that you drew.
Yeah.
And all I had to do was flip up the other oppression and standby, and there was absolutely nothing you could do.
Yeah, it would be like set honest. Go ahead. That would have been it. Yeah.
And we were in time. That was your last turn.
Oh yeah. Yep, that's right.
And so I just am an idiot. I didn't know any better, and I lost. So I took so many licks like that, man. Here's another thing you wouldn't think you should take accountability for, but at Nationals last year, it was in Raleigh, so it was one of the few events that I could travel to with my life the way it is and as busy as it is now. But went to Nats at Raleigh. I played Hero Frogs, and I drew some combination of Dupe Frog and Treeborn as 3 cards constantly throughout the day. I don't remember how many times it was. I was keeping up with it at the time, and I remembered it for a while, but it was close to like a dozen times on the day. And I was like, how is this possible?
This deck sucks.
How is this possible?
How is this deck good? People have to be cheating.
Everyone is stacking me. Well, someone was stacking me. and it was me. I realized that I was sub comboing and I would have all of my frogs together. And then I was pile shuffling and my frogs were somehow evenly spaced so that I was getting like two or three frogs in every hand. And instead of just like y- I would pile shuffle and then I would shuffle like I mean there was no attempted stacking for my opponent or me. Like, I honestly thought I was shuffling my deck good and trying to get like some sort of random representation for what I was drawing. But no, I was stacking myself every single round, and had to take accountability for how I even shuffle.
And I think it went on for a little bit after that too. Like we played in a 3v3 where you played Blackwing and you just literally drew Kalutes in 2 to 3 the whole day.
That was just the day. I didn't power shuffle that day.
Just look over your
Yeah.
hand and you're like colluding with a Kalute, and I'm just like, oh, great. Nice.
Yeah, we have a running joke among Michael and I and a couple other guys on our team that all I draw is little wieners.
Yeah.
That's all I know how to play Yu-Gi-Oh with. So
Yeah. Sometimes
unfortunately,
our testing is weird like that. Like that night I was getting demolished by Gladiator Beast because I opened 3 hamster like 3 times.
yes, yes, that's true. He's not
That was
exaggerating.
frustrating. That was frustrating. That is, oh my gosh. The card's already bad against them anyway, but then you factor in drawing 3
Yep.
multiple times. Like, I don't know what the percentage is of you opening a 3 of in your deck, all 3 copies, but yeah, it was crazy. I should have been playing the lottery that night.
Speaking of, we
We hit the lottery
like
this
cards.
week.
Yeah, we did. How did we hit the lottery? What's the lottery?
We got a secret rare Substitute reprint.
Oh, you're right. Actually,
Very nice.
we did hit the lottery,
Great success.
and there is no deck that I enjoy more than Froggers. Dude, should I leak it? Should I leak that I've discovered the best deck in Edison?
Yes. Yeah, you totally should.
It's Kodaris. Been slamming some
Church of
nerds.
Kodaris.
Yeah, Kodaris frogs. Actually, just on the real, I have been discovering. James Ark put out a video not too long ago when he did his Twilight Sworn, talking about the value of a lure in a deck that already draws so much, and how it's sort of there's this comprehensive or exponential value in having additional draw cards. That's also why a deck like Dragon Turbo is so unbelievably insane once it gets going. And frogs can kind of have that. If you play Salvage, Moray, and Avarice, it can be really, really, really dirty. There just aren't many archetypes that enable that engine in Yu-Gi-Oh! Or in Edison, and Kodaris is one of the few of them. So you're really, if you lose to Kodaris, you're not losing to Kodaris, you're just losing to frogs. But it's fun to say that you're
Yeah.
losing to Kodaris.
We need to get Cursed Tech Guy on an episode of this.
Oh my goodness, man, we should
What is this man's Discord name? Someone drop the Discord name below. Zuxid.
wait, what? Yeah, Zuxid.
Zuxid. Someone. Let's get this man on the podcast. Let's make it happen.
We can talk about his personal growth as
Yeah.
the cursed deck creator.
Yeah,
And
so
first, I
you
was
have
trying to kill
unhinged
people with lava golem.
you have unhinged deck builders like Dimitri, right? And then you have Zuxid, who's like, today I'm playing airplane fairies and beating people. And it's so funny. I saw someone at Indie playing like his deep draw, like Cosmo Queen, like those things. And I was like, what the heck? This guy's literally, it was round 2. And I was like, this guy literally beat someone round 1.
Wow.
Yeah. Get that man on
I've
here.
seen the what's the thing where he has like magic box or whatever in creature swap where you try to draw 7?
Oh,
Is that what you're
Sasuke Samurai number, I don't remember. It's one where if it deals damage, your opponent draws till they have 7. So you creature
Yes.
swap it over to them, then run into it.
I've actually seen that deck played on high ranking Edison ladder. Like for real being played.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. It's insane.
Some of his ideas he comes up with, you could definitely like build onto that, because some of them are so crazy that like the ceilings are just like so high. Like he made one of like some kind of Exodius OTK deck where you could get your Exodius up to like 10,000 attack. And that was great. I love that guy. I
Yeah.
really enjoy his videos. Definitely inspiring.
Yeah, some of his monster mash decks are kind of real.
Yeah.
The percentage, by the way, of opening 3 of a card in Yu-Gi-Oh is 0.2%.
Bro, how did I do that 3 games straight? How? Literally, I mean, I guess there's a trade off there because there were a couple times at Indy where I would Avarice and then draw 2 JDs off of Avarice. So I guess you have to take the good with the bad. Don't know what the odds of that happening are, but I don't feel like that's very high.
What was I going to say? I know we're moving towards the end of our time, but maybe you could share just kind of well, I don't know. We're talking a little bit about how being a good person and good habits in the rest of your life correlates to healthy Yu-Gi-Oh habits and more success in this game that we all enjoy. So maybe we can move towards a sign off by giving just one general piece of advice to listeners. What's one thing you would encourage them to do in their life apart from Yu-Gi-Oh that would encourage healthy habits inside the game of Yu-Gi-Oh?
Learning, this is something I struggled with for a long time. Just learn to admit when you're wrong. And that will take you so far. Like, I can't tell you how many problems I've had, relationships, friends, whatever. Just, I did no wrong. I could never admit that I messed up, I did something wrong. And that really helped me, just being able to like admit, hey, I messed up, this was wrong, this wasn't good, whatever it was. Not necessarily just in a relationship or friendship, but just being able to admit when you screw up and coming out better from it. I really think that's what helped me a lot.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good word. Let's see. I probably would have said something similar, but I'll go in a different direction. I will say,
Don't play Noble
learn
Knights.
in real life. It can go very poorly for you.
Yeah.
You end up
You don't want to be playing the game
in the
of
crazy house.
you don't want to be playing the game of life while you're playing Noble Knights because it's not
Hello,
going to go good for you.
checking out at Walmart. Hello, I am the Lady of the Lake.
Would you like to be escorted to the Isle of the Bricks? Or would you like some fresh tiramisu? You just start screaming and just run out of the Walmart.
Would you like to equip yourself to me? Together we'll be indestructible.
Tiramisu. Ah, the horror. No targeting. Spin 2. I gotta get out of here. Okay. Anyway.
I always played Medolce and he always played Noble Knights. And literally just negated anything his deck could do. The whole point of his deck just fell apart.
That's where my mental problem started.
And your growth.
That's true. There is a caveat. That is true.
So I would say my piece of advice would be try to find something less toxic, less unstable, less transient to find your self-worth in. So for me, and I believe this is an objective reality, and so this is not not going to turn this into a preaching session, a little evangelistic corner, but I will say for me, my ultimate reality, what I find value and self-worth in is my identity in Christ, my belief system. And I think when you have something outside of yourself to ground you, you don't ebb and flow on little successes and failures, And it just seems to me like we're all really unstable. Like someone can say the slightest word, both positive or negative, and we're either soaring or we're sinking. Oh, we have the little slightest win, like we do well at locals or we do poor at locals, and we're flying or we're crashing. And I think that's because we find so much value in what others think of us, how others perceive us, Being good at something, I don't know, man. And so I think being able to anchor your value and how you see yourself in something outside of these roller coaster type activities in life will help stabilize you and also put you in a more neutral position to honestly and with a level head evaluate your plays, your experience, and improve from it, you know?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Very. This is free coaching and free therapy here, guys. You don't have to pay for this.
My PayPal, if you would like to tip, is no. I actually don't even have one. It's my wife's, so, and I don't know it. Yeah. Well, cool, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate you inviting me on.
Of course, of course. I want to point out one thing here before we get out of here. A metaphor that you made very early on in this episode was you just add a grain of salt, or I'm sorry, not a grain of salt, a grain of sand every day, and you look over and you have a sandcastle. I think that was a really beautiful way to paraphrase that.
Hmm.
I'm definitely stealing that. I guess you could say like grain of salt if you're like losing a lot, but
Yeah, and you look over and
there's a
you're
salt shaker.
you're a sandcastle of salt. Yeah.
Yeah, so I really like that. Hopefully this episode helps people get their like their thought process, how they think about the game straight. I know that was, like we've said a few times, a really big turning point for me. And as always, guys, if you have any questions or anything you just want to talk about, topic suggestions, you can email those to the Edison Club fan mail at gmail.com, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. So anything you'd like to say before we get out of here?
Nah, man. Love you, buddy. Love you guys.
All right, you too, man.
Blessings.
Thank you all for
Catch you next time.
listening. We'll catch you guys on the next episode. This is Mike and Blake from the Edison Club signing out.